Hi, Andrew Kaluza here from the Young Americans for Liberty chapter at the University of Texas at San Antonio. I want to give you guys an update about our free speech wall that we had a couple weeks ago. We dealt with a lot of bureaucracy to try to get that wall up and ready and actually host the event. So this was a long ordeal we had to go through. We started off in January, sent in the paperwork, and we sent in many plans, and every time they'd give us plans, or every time we sent in plans, they'd come back with counter arguments and all sorts of stuff that we had to figure out details to. Eventually we had to compromise on a bunch of issues and just host our event inside in a small secluded area, but I'll go into that further later. But just this it was quite an experience, and I guess we'll just go ahead and tell you about it. I want to clarify that we did come up with a litany of ideas to the school's objections about the safety of our wall, on how to get around them or, work with the school. And all of them were shot down one by one. An original idea, or one of the ideas we passed across in our meeting, was that we could post paper on a building wall and just have people come by and write on it. And this idea came from College Libertarians Pepperdine University, where Michelle Fields and their organization put up paper on the wall, and everyone came by and wrote down with markers and said their piece, and it was a great event. But we knew at our school that we have a high level of bureaucracy to deal with. And they would come and say that no, we could possibly damage things, and so therefore, don't do that. Don't post on there. And they only have designated areas for posting posters. But we were worried, or we felt like we were going to deal with too much bureaucracy trying to deal with just posting paper on a wall of the school. They would charge us with damages and all sorts of stuff in that case. So we decided to come up with a shape, or that we would build our own wall, and the shape we came up with was a V, and it would sit on the ground like that, and this V would stay, just the shape of it would keep the whole wall sturdy and staying up in the wind, and being able to not be pushed over and all sorts of stuff. So we came up with that. Well, the school wasn't convinced. After weeks of them having our paperwork, they came back and they said, this just doesn't look safe. We need to stand up in the wind. And we're like, well, okay. We think it will stand up, and we know it'll stand up in even the harshest of winds, but we'll appease you. We'll make it undeniably sound that it will stay up in the worst of worst winds. So we come back and we're like, okay, we'll add on a panel. So it was originally 16 feet, and we added it to make it 24 feet. We added on a panel. It had two sides, and in the middle it would be a panel connecting the two, and so it would be a half hexagon shape that would sit on the ground. And we extended the bases on it 5 feet, so it was like 30 to 40 pound bases, very not top heavy at all, wall. And we presented that idea to the school, and so events management comes back with us weeks later again. Nope, we don't like the idea, and so we present another idea. We're like, okay, well, even though we're quite certain that it'll stand up, we'll definitely get it done. And so they're like, look, this thing needs to be held up in hurricane force winds, and our jaws drop. We're like, what? Hurricane force winds in San Antonio? That's ridiculous. We live 2.5 hours away from the coast. Have we ever even seen a hurricane come here? It's not even hurricane season. Why do we have to deal with that? And they kept giving us that rhetoric, and so we're like, look, we'll extend ropes to tent tent stakes, and we'll stake the stakes into the ground. Even though it's all cement, we can post it and we can stake them into the garden areas, and then they're like, well, we'll talk to facilities about it, but that would pose a tripping hazard, and that would pose a lot of issues with damages to those garden areas, and so they just kept coming up with negative feedback on it. And then we're like, well, what if we extend ropes to trees or other buildings? And they're like, well, we'd have to talk to facilities about that, but it may cause damages as well. And so we're like, look, what do you guys want us to do? What can we do? What ideas can we come up with? Because everything we're coming at you guys with, you're turning down. And they're like, well, you could buy insurance. In fact, we recommend that you buy insurance because this event could get very costly for you if damages happen, and we don't want to be held liable. And so we're like, okay, I've never done that before, but how much would insurance cost on this? And we looked at prices, and it was going to be minimum 1,100 to 2,100, and that was for low traffic areas. Now the costs go up based off the traffic. So, in a campus of 29,000 students, being the main center for attraction, it would be astronomical, multiple thousands of dollars just to host this event. So we were like, what do we do? We can't afford it. Our budget is $135. That's ridiculous. We shouldn't have to be paying multiple $1,000s for this event. And it was just completely unfounded. So we were very upset, and we looked up in FIRE's guide to free speech on campus. FIRE is Foundation for Individual Rights and Education. In it, they have something on this very topic. That insurance would be like charging a fee for free speech, whether directly or indirectly. So it goes on to talk about a Supreme Court case, Forsyth County versus the Nationalist Movement, back in 1992, dealt with a provision of a county ordinance declaring that the cost of protecting demonstrators on public property should be charged to the demonstrators themselves, if that cost exceeds the usual cost of law enforcement. So the Supreme Court juts back, and they're like, no. That's unconstitutional, because if you charge insurance arbitrarily to protesters, you could prevent free speech from happening, just based off of that whole deal. And so you can't charge, or you can't prevent free speech from happening, or free speech protests or anything like that from happening, simply because you want to charge insurance for it. Because I mean, you would have way too much power in allowing free speech in your area. So I thought it was a very interesting thing, and we used that as in our case, and it really helped us out. So thank you so much, FIRE, for posting that. We also had to push our debt clock off of our calendar for the semester. We had planned on it. Young Americans for Liberty National had this program that in any campus or organization or any YAL chapter that wanted to participate in the debt clock could participate and possibly win first place, second place, third place prize, which was like $500, and we wanted to do it. However, our wall was supposed to be for 3 weeks before that, and that they ended up pushing us back so far because of all the red tape we had to deal with to the exact date that the debt clock was supposed to be started on. And we ended up doing it for that week, and then we couldn't do 2 events at once and plan for 2 events at once, because we just didn't have that amount of manpower to do it, and so we just had to push the whole debt clock off of our calendar. It was getting around finals times, or winding down to that, and tests, and everyone dealing with the huge workload they had academically already. So we just weren't able to even do our debt clock that we had planned on doing. Also, they put us inside of a building, and not just inside. They put us in the corner of this building, and we lost the ability to access that large amount of traffic that we had originally planned on. And the original plan was that we'd be in this area of campus right in the center called the Sumbria. And it's where everyone goes. Everyone passes by it if they're going to class. It's impossible not to see what's going on there. So they, just by having us in this corner of a building, all secluded, way off in the corner, we weren't able to access all of those people. And so we really only got a demographic of people living in certain dormitories that are going out through that certain path, or maybe just people, just happenstance passing through. And that was our only demographic, and we could have accessed even more than that. So they miniaturized our original goal. We had a good event, but our vision was for that higher traffic area, and being secluded in a corner doesn't help out with that. So it's pretty aggravating. Check out Students for Liberty's protest grants that they have. If it weren't for SFL, we wouldn't have been able to do this. So thank you, SFL. Thank you, FIRE, Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, for the great resources that we were able to use. And also for all you Liberty chapters out there, host a free speech event today. Or in the next semester, or fall or spring. You have to. It's a popular issue. There's no reason not to. All right. Well, thanks guys for listening, and